Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Vestanland. In this episode, I spent a lot of time around the waterfront, placing down the start of a tram network and some cool-looking piers. Before I get to that, I had to place down a few more buildings in the city center to sort of finish off some of these blocks that I hadn't finished earlier, particularly these ones with these sharp angles in the street grid. I had to find specific buildings that really fit in well with that. And another thing I used was procedural objects on this building to fit this awkward corner shape. It's super tedious, but when I do this for like really important areas of the city, it makes the whole block look a lot nicer, and it makes everything kind of come together a little bit better. So it's definitely worth doing for these particular areas of the city. This is another block this is sort of just an example of some of the work that I've been doing with all the buildings you can see here. I mean, I sort of have to place each one down individually and move it into place so that I can capture these sort of awkward angles in the street grid, which is, very characteristic of an old city, before streets were put down before cars. So I wanted to sort of replicate that, and the only way to do it is to place buildings down one by one. I'll let you guys watch this part of the build, and I will come back when I get to the waterfront and start detailing some pretty cool stuff over there. As promised, I have returned, and I'm here to talk about this big building that I'm placing down right on the edge of the water. This is the American Hotel from Amsterdam. I saw it in the workshop, and I just immediately knew it had to be in the city somewhere. I think it really fits kind of what I'm going for on this shoreline area. I mean, you can look at it. It's just a really nice hotel. It's like really fancy and really old, or at least it looks really old. So I knew that had to factor in, and now I'm kind of placing down this new quay wall, kind of around that, kind of using that as a guide. And then now I'm sort of terraforming a little bit. I had placed that pier thing out there earlier on, kind of just to get an idea of what I wanted this part of the city to look like, but it was sort of a little too space constricting, and I decided to kind of revamp it a little bit. Placing down this quay road wall. It's I think it's the big pedestrian quay pack on the steam workshop. It looks super nice, and it's functional and all those good things. So defining this harbor area was really important for the rest of the episode, because it sort of defines what I'm going to be able to work on and where things are going to go. Getting this kind of breakwater out there provides even more of like a coastline area to put ferry terminals and piers and wharves and all that kind of stuff, which we'll factor in later on. Now I'm using these Also kind of like ornate buildings. These are, I think, modeled on buildings from Berlin. And I'm sort of adding them to the unfinished sides of the hotel to kind of make it look like one more complete building. I ended up converting these buildings to procedural objects so I could sink them into the ground without messing up the terrain around them. And I kind of changed the colors. I sort of made it so it looked a little bit more like a cohesive building. But these two buildings, especially they had the little like spires on them, kind of fits in with the ornate style of the American Hotel. I think this sort of worked out really well. It was another thing, kind of took some trial and error to get right, but I think once I was able to finish it, it looked really nice and provides kind of a centerpiece for the waterfront of the city. I also I sort of spliced in a few more buildings, like these French style ones, similar style to the rest of the structure with the kind of like the windows and the ornate railings and stuff like that kind of complemented the vibe I was going for. I ended up converting one of these to PO because they didn't really fit in exactly right with the building behind them. So I did that to kind of squish it down a little bit, which I think made it look a little bit better. This kind of whole process, it's important to get the big things right in building a city like this, and that's kind of what I did with this little area. Getting all the nodes in the PO and sort of pushing it all together so it's just right is it's time consuming and it's hard sometimes, but it makes things look nice once it's done. After I was done sort of constructing this big hotel, I went around to the front of it and started detailing. I placed down these sort of stone tile decals to form a path to the sort of main entrance, and I also placed down a bunch of planters and bushes and stuff like that, sort of some nice landscaping, because it seems like that would be fitting for a nice hotel. Added some flowers, made it look nice, all that good stuff. Fences, give the people staying in a nice hotel some privacy, you know. I placed down another row of this vanilla table, which was included with the asset. I thought it looked pretty good, so I made another row of it to kind of flesh that out a little bit more. It's probably some kind of nice restaurant. Maybe that's only accessible to people staying at the hotel, something like that. Another thing I did was I kind of stretched this bike path out along the water. I imagine that would be a really cool way to get around the city and to see the sights. I want that to be kind of a central part of the city going forward, so it was important to put that in right at the beginning. I also placed down a few trees, continued with the fences, kind of just fleshing out this whole area. And once I was done with sort of establishing that, I was able to go through and really get going on this tram network. This took a lot of time to find the right networks and things like that. But I think once I got the right things in place, it ended up looking really cool. You can even see here, like I'm playing around with all these like the cobbles and the grass and all different kinds of stuff. Eventually I get the station tracks down. I kind of play around with the nodes and I kind of try to get them to the right size and all that. Eventually I'm able to create something that looks really cool. And you working with networks and nodes can be really frustrating because they do things you don't want them to do all the time, but there's always a couple tricks you can use with node controller and stuff like that to really create something special, and I think that's what I was able to do here. Let me know down below in the comments if you like this kind of custom and probably kind of inefficient waterfront transit intersection thing. I think it looks pretty cool. Let me know your thoughts on it once it's all done. You can see I'm kind of creating this bike path crossing. I used this invisible bike path to connect the two visible ones, as you may have seen. That actually worked better than I was expecting. I thought that the nodes would get all messed up, but they didn't, much to my surprise, which was nice. Now I'm moving on to detailing this waterfront tram station. These straight tram tracks, they come with like a station built in, so I built out like a dummy tram line just to get the station platforms. Fortunately, the platforms I don't love the look of the platforms that much, so I had to spend some time going through, putting down some networks and some props to kind of spruce them up a little bit. Again, kind of tedious to find the right assets to get the look I was going for. But once I did that, I thought it looked pretty cool. You can see, I mean, it's very finicky sometimes to like push these all down into the right size, into the right height. But yeah, again, once it's done, it looks pretty cool, I think. I'll let you watch the rest of this just to see how this comes together. But again, thanks so much for watching. If you're this far along in the video, I really appreciate it. And I'll be back with you in a second. I'd like to take a second to thank you guys again for watching, and I'd also like to just ask that, you know, if you're enjoying the video, to give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from this series. Helps me out a lot, and it means a lot to me that you guys are watching this video and supporting the channel. As far as what I'm doing here, after I finished building out or at least like setting up the tram station, I moved back over to this plaza in front of the big hotel, and I started to do some work detailing it, and that involved putting down a bunch of planters and kind of outlining it. These particular planters that I'm using, the ones that I'm kind of using to outline the plaza, are from the workshop, and they're by Avania. I really like these because they come sort of pre-detailed, basically. Like, they have all these bushes and trees and made like benches and stuff like that, so you don't have to worry about placing them all individually. And just creates a great atmosphere. They look really nice, and I thought they fit in perfectly with this area. Another thing that I used was this fountain with the animated water, which is a really nice touch. It's kind of, I'm using this as a sort of a focal point for the plaza. It seems like a cool place that people would congregate by and hang out next to. And it just looks really cool with the water flowing down it, as you can see there. After that, I moved on to placing down some tiles just to create this nice texture for the plaza. This is something that is really important because, especially when you're creating these like big open spaces, when you just have like the pavement texture, it looks kind of boring. But then once you place down just a big open space with these decals, it really ties things together and gives it a more unified look, which is really important. I use procedural objects here to help fit these decals into a more awkward place. It's really hard without PO to get this working for a non-rectangular area, but that's what I had here with this kind of curved bike lane. So having procedural objects handy was really nice, and using it allowed me to create a cohesive plaza that I'm really happy with how it turned out. I did more of the same on this upper part of the plaza by these cobblestone tram tracks. I'm really happy with how the tracks kind of blend into the plaza. It gives a pretty realistic look, I think, at least based on what I've seen in different cities I've been looking at on Google Earth. Kind of having the tram just kind of run through the plaza and people are kind of walking around. It's a cool area, in my opinion. After I was done with that, I moved back over to the tram station, and here I'm doing some more work to obscure the original texture, which I didn't think fit very well with this sort of concrete block that I colored to make it a little more dark and fit in with the rest of the platform a little bit better. And yeah, I created these nice ramps, which I think look pretty cool. Um, and yeah, once I had that, I can move on towards putting down the props for the actual station platforms. I started out with these lamps to shed some light on the station. Seemed like that was pretty important. I decided to go with sort of some modern-looking props, both for the lamps and for these station shelters, because I figured this station was likely something that was pretty new or like renovated, something like that. So I figured it made a lot of sense to have sort of a modern theme going on. And yeah, I think these props kind of help to do that. I placed down 4 or 5 of them in a row, and then make sure they're all on the same height. I copied them over and placed the same ones on the opposite side of the station to kind of create a unified, symmetrical looking place, which I think was important. I also placed down a few signs with timetables, be useful for people walking around, wanting to see when the next train's arriving. I then put down some benches on the platforms, again, going with sort of a modern theme. These benches kind of fit in with that whole idea of a sort of a newly built station. And yeah, they sort of fit in. Again, I placed down just a couple of rows of them and then copied them and placed them on the other side of the station, kind of creating one unified look, which I thought was pretty important to get right in terms of just creating a station that looked realistic and looked modern and looked like just a nice place to sit while you're waiting to catch a train. After I was done with the station, I moved back over to the Plaza to finish up detailing it. I started off by placing more of these planters by Vanya in the Plaza, making sure they're all the same height and all that good stuff. After that, I moved on to placing down some tables. These brightly colored ones I thought added a nice sort of pop of energy and color to the Plaza. I did the same thing with the umbrellas, where I used a couple different colors just to create some variety and sort of keep the place looking interesting. And I think I was able to pull that off with these details. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how realistic it is, but it does look a little more interesting, I think, to have all these bright colors kind of dotting the Plaza. After I finished detailing that, I moved back over to the area around the tram station and started placing down these pier buildings. These function as ferry stops. Once we have the ferry up and running, there'll be boats coming in and out of here. And once that's all set up, this will be kind of a waterfront transit hub of sorts, because you'll have the tram and you'll have ferries coming in and out, so people can get around more easily. Which that'll be really cool to see once I get that sorted out. And then I started placing down a few more props, a few more signs, benches, things like that. A couple of shelters for people to stand under, get in the shade or get out of the rain or whatever it may be. And then I moved on to this area, which sort of gave me a chance to do some of the first nature detailing of the series, because I had this sort of awkward space where I couldn't really place any buildings, but it was kind of above the water line, and I didn't really know what else to do, so I kind of decided to put down a few kind of scruffy bushes and rocks and stuff like that. And this is another example of something that's just, you don't really think about it while you're looking at a city, but then once you put it in, you realize that's what was missing from the area. It just gives it a lot more character. Putting down some of these bushes, and you'll see I put down some grass, some weeds, some breakwater rocks with moss and stuff like that. And I think it's a really important thing to add, just to give the whole area a little more character. And I'm really happy with how this little kind of area that was kind of an afterthought ended up adding a lot to this waterfront area that I've been building. Last thing I did was I went back through and placed down some broken asphalt decals just to give a little more character to the place, give a little more texture, a little more personality. And then the last little thing I did was I added this prop building. It's a clam shack, and I figured this would be a nice restaurant to hang out at. I imagine this would have some pretty great seafood. I put down some tables and umbrellas for people to sit at and stuff like that. And yeah, I think it's sort of a finishing piece to the whole area, and I'm really happy with how this turned out. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll hopefully see you in the next video.